It's Trekzone's Bradathon as coronavirus continues to lock us down. Our Talkin Science guru, astrophysicist Dr. Brad Tucker is here to chat about astronomical learning for the kids while they're stuck at home. And we're also going to give a plug for his upcoming educational live streams.
Across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts and YouTube, this is the 8th season of A Trekzone Conversation with Matt Miller.
He's with me right now. Brad, I was going to say happy Quarantine Tuesday, but of course that's tomorrow for Talkin Science. Happy Quarantine Monday.
Happy Holiday Quarantine Monday, right? That's really the emphasis here. You know, a holiday Monday versus a quarantine Monday, what's the difference? Chocolate.
Chocolate. And tons
That's
of
pretty
chocolate.
much the only difference, to be honest.
And Easter's the only time of the year that you're allowed to eat chocolate for breakfast on a Sunday.
That's right, exactly. It's good for every meal of the day, really, on Sunday.
And of course, we celebrate the significant part of the calendar for the Christian listeners amongst us. Of course, chocolate isn't the only Easter reason.
No, that's right, and I think as we talked about, right, you know, Easter does correspond or relate to astronomy. Easter is always the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the vernal equinox in the northern hemisphere, vernal being the spring equinox. So, you know, that is how it's decided. So you have something based on the Earth's rotation around the sun relative to its tilt, and then we determine it based on the moon's orbit around the Earth and its position with the Earth and the sun, and that is actually what sets the time of Easter. So a very astronomically themed holiday.
But don't tell the church that science has played a role in telling us where Easter is.
No, that's how they defined it, right? You know, they're fully aware, and they've built it in. You know, one of the interesting things about it is the first person to theorize and calculate the Big Bang was George Lemaitre, who is a Catholic priest, in fact.
Oh, right. Well, there you go.
Yeah. So, you know, it's one of those unknown things that goes hand in hand back a century at least.
We don't talk about Galileo, though.
Yeah, look, if you go too far back, you go too far back. You got to find the sweet spot.
Well, of course, I've brought you in today because you've got some educational live streams coming up. And we'll talk about those in a little bit. It's all about what's going on in the world at the moment. You know, we've been talking about it on Talking Science for a number of weeks about coronavirus and the way that it's changing the way that we're living our lives. And it's not just the adults that are affected by this. There are a lot of kids around the world as well, that schools are being closed in some countries. Here in Australia, they're remaining open, but some states are recommending don't take your kids to school. Victoria, as an example. Term 2 is coming up for much of the country as well. So what can kids, if they are locked down with mum and dad at home, it doesn't mean that learning needs to stop, really, does it? Because there are many things that kids can be doing.
That's right. I mean, there's a lot of things that kids can do. A lot of resources are going online, not just from us, but other groups, realizing that there's a lot of things that we can talk about, we've produced that you can make online to make it easier. From talks that we can do to videos we've recorded to also just demonstrations that we know how to do and activities, really those hands-on things, so you're not just watching and staring in front of a screen for endless hours on end, and actually, you know, do something at home. And I think that's one of the great things about astronomy and space is, yeah, you know, it's always nice to have a telescope, but there's actually a lot you can do without it, especially with the internet nowadays. You can use a little bit of information online and a little bit of your own observations, your own calculations, your own experiments, and that show things not only just about astronomy and space, but physics, a lot of maths, in fact, and chemistry. I always love actually giving real-world examples of trigonometry. You know, that thing you never thought you use when you're taught in school. We use it every day. I use it practically weekly.
Wow. I failed desperately hard at trigonometry.
It is something that we know by heart because we use it all the time. And you can actually measure, there's a way of measuring the distance the Earth is from the sun just by using trigonometry in the stars.
Give us an example, Brad.
So it's a technique we call parallax. So parallax is that, you know, the Earth goes around the sun. So it's like if you hold your finger out and you blink your eyes. Well, your finger will move differently to the background depending on what eye you're blinking. So if you know the distance between your eyes, you can measure the distance to your finger by the way the things change in the background, because we know the different trigonometry sides. Or we could do it the reverse. If we know the distance to a star and we can see its position change, say, when we're on one side of the sun, say in April, and then you wait 6 months later when you're on the other side of the sun, in October, you can see how that position changes, work backwards, and actually measure how far away the Earth is to the sun very accurately.
And of course, we should say that we shouldn't be testing this parallax theory looking at the sun. That would be pretty dangerous. But
that's right. So you use just any generic star that you can see. The Southern Cross is perfect because there's always a point you can see at any time, so you can see how it actually changes. So it's a really cool way of using this tool, and this is how we do it. We know the Earth-Sun distance quite well. We use that as a measuring stick to measure accurate distances to nearby galaxies all the time. And this helps us lead to knowing that the universe is actually expanding faster than it should be. So one of the biggest discoveries has been made using trigonometry.
Wow. Well, a good object in the night sky, and it's a good time since the full moon has passed us. We can try this thumb trick with the moon, which is currently rising a little later in the night, but it is still there in the morning now as well.
That's right. And so the thumb trick was always a good example. If you want to see how big the thumb is, the moon is on the horizon compared to above you, it always seems really big on the horizon. Wait as it rises on the eastern horizon. You can stick out your thumb, see how big it looks. Then as it goes higher in the sky, stick out your thumb again, and you realize, well, it's actually the same size. And in fact, it's purely an optical illusion by your brain when it's on the horizon. So there's really simple things that you can do to see it. You can actually, if you really want to calculate how quickly the orbit of the moon is around the Earth, just look at every phase. Just look outside and measure what phase the moon's in every night or when it rises, and you'll see that the moon orbits the Earth every 29 and a half days, except it doesn't.
Oh, now come on, you can't leave me hanging there.
Oh, you got to leave a cliffhanger. No, it's a really cool thing. And this is something that you have to think about. So we know the moon's orbit is 27.3 days. The lunar cycle, so say from phase to phase, so full moon to full moon, is 29 and a half days. Why are the two not the same? Any guesses?
It doesn't rotate as fast as the Earth?
Not quite. It's because in the time of 30 days, the Earth has moved around the sun. And since the phases are all about the light from the sun lighting up the moon, there's actually a 2-day lag between lunar phases that makes up the difference. So there's what we call the lunar cycle, the lunar phase cycle, and the sidereal cycle or the synod cycle. So it's kind of this really cool thing where you can then, if you figure out and measure how fast the cycles of the moon is, and then you look up what we know the actual rotation of the moon around the Earth is, you can work backwards and figure out how fast the Earth is traveling through space.
And how fast is the Earth moving through space?
Well, in the difference, you actually get about 30,000 kilometer difference.
Wow. Just a little, though.
Which is big, yeah. So these really cool things where you can use your own observations, experiments, look up some information, and do some really cool calculations for yourself to prove very fundamental things in the universe and things that students have to do in school.
And it is very cool. It's one of the easiest ways, I think astronomy is one of the easiest subjects to really bring home. And as you say, get off the screen time. There are obviously apps to help with astronomical observing, and they're good. But it is a subject that you don't have to sit in front of a screen to thoroughly enjoy.
That's right. There's a lot of different things you can go and do to experience and see for yourself what's going on. And I think that is the great thing. My favorite, as I think we've talked about, is Venus right now. So Venus is up in the early evening. And so if you go out a little after sunset, you'll see the very bright object Venus in the western skies. And it looks like a star, but it's Venus. And if you have a small pair of binoculars, it doesn't need to be very big, and you look through it, what you'll see is Venus isn't a circle. It it's actually like half filled. It's a little bit less than half. And that's because Venus have phases. And so if you go out every couple nights and just draw on a sheet of paper, draw a circle and then shade in the region that looks covered. And what you'll notice from now all the way through the end of May is that shaded part will get bigger and bigger and bigger until it essentially disappears, until Venus goes from half Venus to quarter Venus to almost new Venus. And then eventually we lose it because it goes in front of the sun, essentially, or next to the sun. And this is the cool thing. So you're actually able to see there's phases of other planets. And this is the key information, along with the moons of Jupiter, that Galileo used to prove that the Earth was not the center of the universe.
And I believe that we never actually see Venus as a whole. It's always in a phase. Is that right?
That's right, because we only start to see it just slightly after. Because if you think about where it has to be, so if Venus, in order for it to be full Venus, that is, it has to be on the other side of the Earth in terms of its orbits, because the sun has to be lighting up the side of Venus that we can entirely see. Well, that means by definition we'd only see it in our daytime, right? Because it's lighting our side up as well. So we only start to see it really when it comes around and starts to get, around the half mark and a little bit later, all the way getting closer to new. And then we have to wait for months, and then we start to see the opposite, where it starts to start coming out of new phase and into quarter, all working up to half. And that's when we call Venus the morning star. So when Venus is in the early morning in the eastern skies, it's coming kind of out of its new phase. When it's in the evening in the western skies, it's heading into the new phase. So if you just think about kind of the orbits of it, the same exact way the moon works around the Earth.
That is very cool. And for those without a telescope at home, fear not, because Brad, you and friends at the National University are putting together some live streams over the next few weeks.
That's right. So, we will be streaming content essentially as long as schools are in some remote operation, which, I think we're all expecting at least through term 2, so through June, July. We'll be doing a series of talks, both on just science, astronomy, things that we're doing. But when I'm doing it, we'll also do demonstrations, and I'll tell you how to do activities that you can go and do home. So, for instance, the first one I'll be doing this week, so tomorrow, Tuesday the 14th, will be on the sun, earth, and moon. So we'll talk about how they work together, those things that we just touched on, how day and night work, seasons, the phase of the moon. These are all things that students in years 3 and 5 have to learn, but we're going to teach it for you, and I'll show you a cool way. We're just using a torch, some sort of ball you have around home, and kind of a smaller ball, so maybe like a soccer ball and tennis ball. You can create your own sun, earth, moon system and do for yourself. And you can see how the phases work. You can see how the seasons work, and see how day and nighttime work. So really making it practical. And so myself and a bunch of others will be doing these all throughout the next couple weeks to months.
It is very cool. And what target range? Obviously, tomorrow is going to be for the years 3 and 5s. But are we looking at older kids as well?
That's right. So we'll be doing it all the way through pretty much year 12. So in a couple weeks, I'll be talking all about black holes, all the things that we've discovered. So stuff that really you get into in years 10. Some of the other upcoming ones that some of the other students are doing. So on Wednesday the 15th, Eloise will talk about where stars and planets form, essentially how to build a solar system. So that late primary, early high school. And then we'll continue how to find planets, so the transit technique, really for high school students. Again, tell you about how you can devise your own ways of showing and detecting planet transits yourself. So we'll really do a whole range of ages from primary all the way through high school. And of course, adults are welcome. We do not restrict on age, let's say that.
And of course, obviously, a bunch of Aussies getting together and making these live streams happen, but things that are adaptable all around the world as well, aren't they? Anybody listening around the world can dive into these.
Yeah, that's right. It's not restricted to anyone. We will be doing it kind of between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. On the day, so it's at least daytime for all of Australia and most of New Zealand as well. However, you can tune in from anywhere. It will be on Facebook Live, and we'll have a Zoom link as well. And it'll also be then recorded on Facebook Live, so you can go back and watch it as well. And in addition to the live streams and doing the demos, we're also just doing some short videos of explaining how to go build your own activities. We'll talk about one later about how to make your own meteorite impacts and actually seeing how meteorites strike the ground and what that means for the, for the physics of it, the science, and also what happens to the ground and how we detect these things. We won't really be dropping rocks from outer space on you. We'll scale it down a bit.
Grab a bowling ball, jump up to the second-story landing of your house and drop it and see how that goes. No, we don't want to do that.
No, but, it's close to that, to be honest.
We'll simulate
That's right,
it.
Especially if you have some dirt or a sand pit at home, it works perfectly to do this. Because it's really cool. You actually get to see things like what we call liquefaction, where the ground changes to a liquid and moves, and the force when the object, the rock or whatever hits it, moves like a wave through the ground. So it's a really cool thing, and it explains why we see the craters that we do. So a lot of things that hopefully will be fun, hopefully a little bit informational, and make being stuck at home a little bit less boring.
Fantastic. And of course, everyone can find that on your socials. You'll be tweeting out and posting those links. It's at btucker22 on Twitter, Dr. Brad Tucker on Facebook. You can find Trekzone all over social media. Just search for Trekzone. And you can find me as well at MirrorMatt86. Brad, I'm looking forward to tuning in for this one tomorrow. I've worked out the time difference. It's going to be 9 p.m. in New York, 11 a.m., as you said, Eastern Standard Time here in Australia. It's going to be very exciting. And Brad, we're going to catch you on the next episode for Talkin Science.
Take care. And it also, if anyone has anything else they would actually like to hear or explain that we're not going to do, let us know and we'll do it.
Fantastic. All right, Brad. Looking forward to it, and we will see you. We'll see you out there.
We'll see you out there. That's right.